My 3 stepchildren stood in my living room, smirking as they slid a thick, legal-sized envelope across my coffee table, like they were doing me the biggest favor in the world. I picked it up without opening it, watching their faces light up with premature victory. What they didn't know was that they had just started a war they were absolutely going to lose. "It's nothing personal, Alina," Marcus said, adjusting his expensive cufflinks. He was the oldest, and he liked to think he was the smartest. "We just want to make this transition as smooth as possible for everyone." Standing behind him were his sisters, Chloe and Harper. Chloe was checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, already visualizing how she would redecorate the foyer, while Harper, the youngest, refused to make eye contact with me, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Transition?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "To your new living arrangements," Chloe chimed in, finally turning around. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Dad's gone, the estate needs to be settled, and obviously, this house is the bulk of the inheritance." I opened the envelope. Inside was a document titled Notice to Vacate and Settlement Agreement. It was generous, they claimed. They were giving me 30 days to pack up 15 years of my life and leave the premises. In exchange for leaving quietly and without legal resistance, they would allow me to keep my car and personal effects that did not have significant antique value. "We figured 30 days is plenty of time to find a condo," Marcus added. "Something smaller, more manageable for a woman your age." I looked at the 3 of them. I had paid for Chloe's wedding. I had bailed Harper out of credit card debt twice. I had sat by their father's bedside for 4 years while he withered away from cancer, holding his hand while they were too busy with their careers to visit more than once a month. And this was their thank you. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, looking Marcus dead in the eye. "Once we sign this, there's no going back." "We're sure," Harper mumbled, finally speaking up. "It's what Dad would have wanted. The house stays in the family." "The family," I repeated. That was the phrase that sealed their fate. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a placeholder, an occupant. "Where do I sign?" I asked. Chloe let out a breath she'd been holding, and Marcus pulled a pen from his jacket pocket with a flourish. I signed the agreement. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for more time. I signed my name with the same steady hand I had used to sign the checks for their college tuition. "Smart choice, Elena," Marcus said, snatching the paper back as soon as the ink was dry. "We'll be by a few times this month with contractors to get estimates for renovations. We want to list the place as soon as you're out." "Of course," I said. "Do whatever you need to do." As they walked out the door, already discussing how much the marble floors would fetch on the open market, I walked to the window and watched them leave. They thought they were the predators. They had no idea they were the prey. You see, my stepchildren had made a fatal error. They assumed that because their father Arthur was a successful man, he had bought this house. They assumed that because we were married, his assets were my assets, and upon his death, everything reverted to his bloodline. They forgot one tiny crucial detail. Arthur didn't buy this house. My parents did. 15 years ago, when Arthur and I got married, my parents gave us this estate as a wedding gift. But my father, a shrewd businessman who had seen too many fortunes lost to divorce and bad decisions, insisted on one condition. The deed would be in my name only, solely, exclusively. Arthur never cared. He had his own money, and he loved me. He treated the house as ours, and I treated his children as mine. But legally, Arthur was a guest in this house for 15 years. And now, his children were trying to evict the landlord. The next 29 days were a masterclass in patience. I decided to let them dig their hole as deep as possible. They came over nearly every day. Marcus brought in a team of architects to plan a modern extension that would destroy my rose garden. Chloe brought in appraisers to tag my furniture. She put sticky notes on everything. My grandmother's piano, the Persian rugs my mother bought in the 70s, even the silver tea set I was using. "This will fetch a good price at auction," Chloe told me one afternoon, slapping a yellow tag on a lamp I had bought before I even met their father. "You don't mind, do you, Elena? You won't have room for it in a condo anyway." "Not at all," I said, sipping my tea. "You have excellent taste, Chloe." Harper was the only one who seemed uncomfortable, but she didn't stop them. She was too afraid of losing her share of the imaginary payout. She walked through the rooms, measuring the windows for new drapes, muttering about how dated the velvet curtains were. They spent thousands of dollars in that month. They paid retainers to contractors. They hired a staging company. Marcus even put a deposit down on a new Porsche, banking on the sale of the house to cover the payments. "Counting your chickens, Marcus?" I asked him when he showed up in the new car on day 28. "It's an investment," he smirked. "Just like this house. We're gonna flip it and triple our money. Honestly, Elena, you were sitting on a gold mine and doing nothing with it." "I was living in it," I said softly. "Well, living doesn't pay the bills," he laughed. "Tomorrow's the big day. Keys on the counter by noon. Don't be late." The morning of day 30 arrived with a storm. Rain lashed against the windows, matching the mood of what was about to happen. I didn't pack a single box. At 11:55 a.m., a black SUV pulled up the driveway. My stepchildren piled out, dodging the rain, looking like a demolition crew ready to strike. They burst through the front door without knocking. "Time's up," Chloe announced, shaking her umbrella on my hardwood floors. "I hope you're ready. The stagers are coming at 1. They stopped dead when they walked into the living room. I was sitting in my favorite armchair by the fire. The house was exactly as it had been a month ago. No boxes, no bare walls, just me, a pot of coffee, and my lawyer, Mr. Sterling. "What is this?" Marcus demanded, his face flushing red. "Why isn't your stuff packed? We have a signed agreement, Elena." "We do," I agreed, setting my cup down, "and I intend to honor the spirit of a departure today. But there seems to be a confusion about who is leaving." "Cut the crap," Chloe snapped. "Get out, or we're calling the sheriff to drag you out." Mr. Sterling stood up. He was a tall man with a voice like gravel, and he had no patience for entitled children. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Mr. Sterling said. "Please sit down." "Who are you?" Harper asked, her voice trembling. "I am Mrs. Vance's attorney, and you are trespassing." Marcus laughed, a nervous high-pitched sound. "Trespassing? This is our house. Our father left it to us." Mr. Sterling opened his briefcase and pulled out a single document, not the agreement they had forced me to sign, but a copy of the property deed, dated 15 years ago. He slid it across the coffee table, right to the spot where they had slid their eviction notice 30 days prior. "Read the grantee line, please," Mr. Sterling said. Marcus snatched the paper up. Chloe and Harper crowded around him. I watched their eyes scan the text. I watched the exact moment their reality shattered. "Grantee, Elena Vance," Marcus whispered. He looked up, his face pale. "But," Dad said. "Your father called this his home," I said, standing up, "because I made it his home. But he didn't own a single brick of this mansion. My parents bought this estate for me before I even walked down the aisle. It has never been in Arthur's name, it is not part of his estate, and it certainly does not belong to you." "That's impossible," Chloe shrieked. "We already spent money, we paid deposits." "That sounds like a personal problem," I said coldly. "You spent money you didn't have on a house you didn't own." "But you signed the agreement," Marcus shouted, waving the paper they had given me a month ago. "You agreed to vacate." Mr. Sterling smiled, a shark-like grin. "She signed an agreement stating she would vacate if she had no legal claim to the property. However, since she is the sole owner, that agreement is void, based on your fraudulent misrepresentation of ownership. You tried to evict the homeowner from her own home. That's fraud, Marcus." I stepped forward. "I gave you a month," I said, my voice rising. "I sat here and watched you insult my taste, tag my belongings like I was already dead, and plan how to spend the money from selling my roof over my head. I wanted to see exactly who you were, and you showed me." "Elena." "Wait," Harper said, tears welling up in her eyes. "We didn't know. We were just grieving." "Grieving?" I laughed, and it sounded sharp in the quiet room. "You weren't grieving. You were calculating. You didn't come here to mourn your father. You came here to cash him out." Mr. Sterling checked his watch. "You have 10 minutes to remove yourselves from the property. After that, I have the police on speed dial to report 3 intruders." "You can't do this to family," Marcus yelled, the veins in his neck bulging. "Family?" I walked over to the antique lamp Chloe had tagged. I ripped the yellow sticky note off and crumbled it in my hand. "Family doesn't give you 30 days to get out. Family doesn't try to throw a widow on the street." I pointed to the door. "Get out." They tried to argue. Chloe screamed. Marcus threatened to sue. But when Mr. Sterling pulled out his phone and actually dialed the non-emergency line, the fight drained out of them. They shuffled out into the rain, soaked and defeated. I watched from the window as they got into their car, Marcus in his new Porsche, that he would now have to explain to the bank he couldn't afford. They had wanted a transition. They got one. I turned back to my living room. It was quiet. It was mine. I walked over to the coffee table, picked up the notice to vacate they had given me, and tossed it into the fireplace. I watched it burn, the flames curling the edges of their greed into ash. I wasn't going anywhere.